Hi, in this episode I want to show you how I won this design duel for a kitchen with antique styling. When I first saw the challenge, I thought it would be a pretty easy job because even though my competitor was a good designer, the design looked ugly. And that's not because of her, but because of the materials that were given to us, as I should later find out. So we could only choose between three ugly, rusty, used wooden panels that have a quite extreme, gray tint or a used look on the kitchen. So my idea of making this modern and nice and stand out were pretty quickly diminished, and I totally understand why my contestant went with the design choices she made. But nonetheless, my attempt was to create something modern, so basically use modern materials for everything else except for what I was forced to use here in order to make this kitchen more contemporary and more friendly and nicer to use, nicer to look at, and potentially win the competition. So my first choice was to go with something bright because I saw no chance of making the green kitchen look beautiful. And now for the countertops, I'm experimenting with a bunch of contrast colors. Either modern steel or black. Black marble would be a good choice as well, but the marble that's available here is a little bit too textured, unfortunately. But I want something that does not look like this kitchen has not been touched in the past 50 years. Luckily, I could choose freely on the backsplashes, on the floor, on the wall, so that allows me to add bright colors, warm tones, and make this a livable and beautiful, welcoming space. The black window frames also help to enforce the contrast and really take away the attention from that used look of the wooden surfaces. I'm adding a nice marble floor, and even though this black and white cow pattern fits well, I had bad experiences using that in the past, so I'm a bit hesitant of using that design. To go with a modern look, I'm here trying out a very, very modern or 90s carpet, and now I'm looking for colors that actually match with the carpet for the remaining surfaces. So that would be either those turquoise or the pink color. And you'll see in a second how that will look like in the kitchen. To be quite frank, I like that. I think this goes extremely well together. And I keep coming back to this color combination, but eventually decide against it. Again, because it's not my kitchen and I need to apply or please the people who are also voting. And my experience just is that those extreme combinations, particularly with pink, just don't work well on the Redecor app and the audience that's using the app. So I'll tune it down a little bit later on and go with just plain white. Nothing can go wrong with that. And we have a lot of nice elements in the kitchen nonetheless. Let's not forget that. So I'm trying again the different materials now that we have the rest of the kitchen designed, and see if maybe the green works. We have the green in the carpet, so here in this case a green, pink and black kitchen might be a feasible option. But on the other hand, I'm really not a fan of this very, very used dirty green on so many surfaces. If it would be just a tiny chair, a smaller element, that's great, but here it's very, very dominant. And while this is possible, I also feel it's very close to the kitchen design that we saw before. So eventually I'll go back to the white kitchen. In those living spaces, it's important to have a friendly atmosphere. Usually you reach that with friendly and bright colors. Since the background is already pretty dark with that green, I'm trying out here now how that works together with the white. But yeah, it's still very dark, and using white furniture is definitely the better choice in this case. You also notice there is a tiny floral pattern on one of the shelves that is part of the design and not possible to do away with. So because of that, I'll in a second also change the carpet to reflect that floral pattern here on the design as soon as I'm happy with a backsplash that looks sort of modern and doesn't add too much more noise because there's already some texture on the wood. So usually 1 or 2 elements with texture are enough, and here I'm now going for a very calm single color background. And returning to the black countertops for the contrast as outlined before also helps to set the plates and the sink apart from the kitchen. And I wish there was a sort of black marble that's not so high contrast like this one here. Here this is too noisy for me. It would be nice if the black had some texture on it. But since that's not an option, I'll go back to the standard black. So next up, the lamps, and unfortunately they are connected with the sink. So even though some nice wooden lamps would be cool here, they also change the sink and the appliances to wood, which just does not make sense. And therefore I'm contemplating about using some of the woods because of their warm tone and warm hue, but eventually settle with plain white or a little bit gray eggshell kind of white to not have too extreme contrasts. But that's also because in this game those two elements are connected and there's no way for me to separate them. So finally coming to the carpet, as said, the cow it kind of works, but it's taking too much attention for something unimportant like a carpet. And this one here actually is beautiful. I feel that ties a little bit to that floral pattern that you see on the right shelf, but it's also an extremely nice carpet and almost too delicate for the shabby look of the kitchen, and that's why I'm hesitant with that one. I do feel though that the carpet needs to have some sort of texture on it, because it's so much area, it's covering so much surface area here, and yeah, it's a tricky situation because I don't want it to be too geometric because the kitchen itself is not so accurate, right? It's shabby, so there is this element of randomness to it, and therefore those kind of handmade carpets have that shabby feel, that randomness look. And now with this one, I feel I have something that also has the floral pattern from the wall and doesn't add too much more colors, like the Japanese carpet here. That's always a little bit try and error, and you have to find your own priorities, see what connects. And as said before, this one I feel is interesting, but it's not as dominant as some of the others, because I want the key focus to be on the countertops, which in the kitchen should be where the focus is, where the work happens. It's on the countertops. And yeah, that's how I came up with this design and won this challenge.